Coming in hot, I'm your host and captain of the Reason to Reason podcast, Sal Galati. We're going to do something a little bit different. You're just going to get a taste, a dose of reason. Welcome back. A lot going on in the world today, and like always, I'm going to try to connect some dots from stuff happening, current events, stuff happening locally, the Bible. Today's episode is going to be called Mountain Movers versus Molehill Misfits. If you're liking the show, by the way, send it around, subscribe to it, having a lot of fun. Hope you're having fun too. The point of the title is, we had recently, they had an amazing strike, an amazing expression of the technology, the bravery, the preparedness of our U.S. military to literally move a mountain in order to get to a facility that was needed to be eliminated for humanity's sake, and just how terribly complicated that was. And I noticed how what they do with such humility, you don't even know who these people are. They've been preparing for, over 10 years for this mission, studying it, eating it, breathing it. And then you have misfits that criticize them, critique them, lie about what they're doing. Couldn't even work their way out of a paper bag. But they're experts in all things and criticizing what they're doing, and they didn't really accomplish what they said they accomplished. So I just wanted to speak to it. Let me connect some dots, right? What is a misfit? And I'm not meaning to be pejorative or insulting. Let's just look at the definition. Someone who is not suited to a situation or is not accepted by other people because their behavior is strange or unusual. So, not qualified. And there's a lot of people that are not qualified to do their job. They have their jobs for other reasons. They have their jobs for political reasons. That's what's so amazing about our military. It's colorblind. Historically, no one cared because it was life and death, and everyone just wanted the best person for the job, for the task at hand, prepared. Because if someone wasn't prepared and was there for other reasons other than their preparedness or their qualifications, someone could get not only hurt but be killed. So I'm going to read from Isaiah and speak to the prophecy that Isaiah gave to the Israel. We'll just read it and I'll unpack it for you. This is Isaiah 3. For behold, the Lord God of hosts is taking away Jerusalem and from Judah support and supply, all support of bread, all support of water, the mighty man and the soldier, the judge and the prophet, the diviner and the elder, the captain of 50 and the man of rank. And I will make boys their princes, and infants shall rule over them. People will oppress one another, every one his fellow, and every one his neighbor. The youth will be insolent to the elder, and the despised to the honorable. Essentially what he's saying is, a condemnation on you will be this. All the strong men, all the leaders in your society, they'll be taken away, and they'll be replaced with children. And I think that's a condemnation on a nation. And I think we've been condemned. Hopefully this thing is being righted, but we've had highly unqualified, really mental children running things. And I said men there because the Bible talks about men, and not to say women can't do these jobs either, but it brings me to the next point. I'm going to highlight Pete Hegseth, who's the head of the Department of Defense, is giving a briefing, really clarifying a gobbledygook report that was leaked with the intent of making it seem that the United States military didn't accomplish what Trump said they accomplished, which was destroy the target at hand, this nuclear facility. And really, just shows you the sinisterness of all these people. Whoever leaked it is a criminal. And what they leaked was a preliminary report, and they could not assess that the facility was destroyed. So what they say is, we don't know. Here's what we know, and we don't know if it's destroyed. But it says with low probability, and he used an expression called linchpin lies, meaning like there's all these points within the assessment that if they're off, everything that follows it is off. And I encourage you, when you have a conversation with people and they start spouting off things, if they got a lie in there, stop them. Clarify the lie. There's no sense in going 4 steps forward from that lie in their logic, in their broken logic, and then try to debate 5 points later that they've made. So he's explaining that, he's laying that all out, and a snarky reporter is being critical and saying, are you sure it's all destroyed? And that's all great, and he answered it, and that's a fair question. But then this question.
Why not acknowledge the female pilots that also participated in this mission? The early messages that you sent out only congratulated the boys.
So when I say something like our boys and bombers, see, this is the kind of thing the press does, right? Of course, the chairman mentioned a female bomber pilot. That's fantastic. She's fantastic. She's a hero. I want more female bomber pilots. I hope the men and women of our country sign up to do such brave and audacious things. But when you spin it as, because I say our boys and bombers, as a common phrase. I'll keep saying things like that, whether they're men or women. Very proud of that female pilot, just like I'm very proud of those male pilots. And I don't care if it's a male or a female in that cockpit, and the American people don't care. But it's the obsession with race and gender in this department that's changed priorities. And we don't do that anymore. We don't play your little games.
Good for him, and that's what needs to be done. Stand up to these bullies. Brilliant answer. I would have added, are there such things as men and women? Haven't we been told for the last 4 years that there is no such thing? It's just a figment of our imagination. Unless you want to make a point to make him seem like a sexist. It's a bunch of nonsense. They don't care about anything other than trying to make Trump look bad, trying to make the nation look bad. Did they care when the Afghanistan fiasco had? Did they have any criticisms, or did they have any doubts as far as the wonderful leadership of the purple-haired misfits that were running the Defense Department at that time? All the children screeching, all the sorority girls and fraternity boys don't know anything about warfare, don't know anything about history, calling all the shots. Our nation had debacle after debacle. We had the balloon floating around, no one could get it down. We had the wildfires in Los Angeles. No one could figure out where the water was. Everything was tapped out. The fire department head chief was obviously not put there because they knew anything about firefighting. It was to fill some quota for LGBTQ. All the nonsense, all the lies, people are tired of it. And I think the nation wants to be led by competent people and not people running around with purple hair. It turns out, yeah, you need people that know how to do the job to run these things. You can't just plug people in because they have a certain qualification. It has nothing to do with their merit. So the lies that we've been told, like, for example, how one lie leads to another lie leads to another insanity locally here. And this happens in all these suburbs of these major cities where you got professors from like Northwestern, for example, here locally, really incompetent people. They're promoted, they self-promote each other, they reassure each other, but they're not tested because the Marxist universities don't bring in people that actually can do science, can think. So these professors who are over-credentialed and underqualified with pink hair, purple hair, and really mental children, right? No sense of ability to reason, or they're the ones spouting off with expertise, allegedly, this whole gender-affirming care nonsense. There is no such thing. The whole thing is built on a lie. The genders aren't fluid, and then when you say it's gender-affirming care, as if it's like a right to some kind of care that children deserve. If you're an adult, go do what you got to do. The government shouldn't have to pay for it. But the children, you're just confusing them. So we talked about Pride Fest that they had in town. It had nothing to do with homosexuality or gay people being oppressed. It had nothing to do with that. And if you look across the nation at the aftermath of these Pride festivals, the cost to all the cities to clean this up, the violence that ensues, the drug abuse that's going on, who's paying for all that? Why do I got to pay for that as a taxpayer to have my city mowed over and looks like, go look up the pictures. Every city that they do it in, there's just filth and destruction afterwards. It's all a lie. It's all a scam, and it's because we're being led by children. Children are making these decisions. Let's talk about another child, Greta Thunberg. She's a child that has no understanding of anything scientific, no understanding of any nuance, any ramifications of her silly ideas. She's a child. But very powerful and sinister people have exploited this child, who is, I think, diagnosed with autism, to whip her up into a frenzy and have her speak to United Nations that the world's going to end if we don't get rid of CO2 gas. It's not true, but can't have a rational conversation when a child is screaming that the world's going to end. This is why it's important we talk to our children, because the world is putting fear in place of truth. If they knew the truth, if they knew that there was a sovereign God in control of all things, it wouldn't be that we would destroy the planet. We'd take care of the planet. We'd steward over his creation that he made. It's just a fear that they put in the kids so that the kids give up their rights. And it's plain as day as what's going on. So this is why we can't be led by the children. The adults need to lead, the mental adults, the mountain movers, not the Molehill Misfits. But this is the condemnation of the Lord on our society, that we've been led by people that are unqualified to lead. So it's very dangerous is the point, right? So as they're doing the snickering back and forth and the intel says this and this and that, how do we know that the mission was successful? Iran agreed to the ceasefire. That tells me what I need to know. Further, it's very dangerous. We want a free press, but it's very dangerous what they put the administration in this position where the strength of the military and the decisiveness of the strike and the successfulness of the strike is what got us peace. And they try to undermine it the whole time, to stifle peace from being made. How much more do you have to see that these people do not want peace? It's not good for their business. And meanwhile, it doesn't cost them anything. They don't send their children to these wars, if they even have children. Most of them don't even want to have children. So because we're dealing with these children that are running things, it's really dangerous. So I want to read a quote, and you could look this up, and people say, "Oh, he didn't really say this," and whatever. And they see this is like an example of like the disorientation, misinformation, malinformation, whatever they want to label it. Whatever, if this quote was attributed to this man or not, the quote has value to it. So it's attributed to the late ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum. He was asked about the future of his country, and he replied, "My grandfather rode a camel, my father rode a camel, I ride a Mercedes, my son rides a Land Rover, and my grandson is going to ride a Land Rover. But my great-grandson is going to have to ride a camel again." The text continues, "Why is that?" he was asked, and his reply was, "Hard times create strong men create easy times create weak men create difficult times. Many will not understand it, but you have to raise warriors, not parasites. Mountain movers, not Molehill Misfits." You see the correlation? You see what our country's dealing with? This is the history of the world. This is a cycle that repeats over and over again. I want to share with you a little Q&A I found of Milton Friedman. And interestingly enough, it reminded me of a story I have about my dad. And my dad was not college educated, but he was a really smart guy, and he understood how things work. And I remember calling him one time from, I took an elective course at University of Illinois, Geology 101. He essentially convinced me that the professor that is, and this is like 2001 or 2, he convinced me like within 20 years we'd be completely out of oil. And I believed him. I mean, he's a professor, right? So I called my dad, and he was laughing on the phone. He goes, "Sal, they have more oil now than when they discovered oil," which is true. And we have more oil now than when this thing was recorded. But the same lie was prevailing, that we have limited resources and yeah, is it forever? I don't know, but there's vast amount of oil remaining. And my dad essentially said, "Calm down. It's just trying to scare you. They'll figure something out." And we are figuring something out, if we even need something else. But I wanted you to listen to this because I think there's something to learn from it.
Before you had mentioned a comparison between 19th century and 20th century America. I'd like to know if you think that's, I don't see how that could be considered a legitimate comparison in terms of the fact that, there were unlimited resources essentially in the 19th century, and now we have a kind of very limited resource and allocation situation. At least this seems to be the thrust of a lot of economists.
That's fundamentally wrong.
And well, just let me before I'm.
Milton's correcting the lie because he doesn't want the points to keep stacking up, but keep going.
Yeah,
sure, you go ahead. Sure.
Let me finish the question. In the 19th century, when you had a completely free economy, you seem to have situations developing where tycoons would come along like Rockefeller or the railroad barons, essentially, and they'd come to dominate society. So is it not a choice? Do we not have a choice between developing that kind of situation where John D. Rockefeller and that crowd will decide what's good for our society or whether the government officials will?
Well, let's take the Rockefellers and just stick with them.
Who created the University of Chicago, incidentally.
I know. He founded the University of Chicago. Tell me, John D. Rockefeller did a great deal of good for this country. He developed and promoted. I'm not talking about his charitable activities. That was separate. Not even about the founding of the University of Chicago. But he developed into a major industry, the oil industry of refining, discovering, and making oil available. He reduced its cost. He never got a dollar from anybody with a gun. He got his money by selling people products at a lower cost than other people could provide it. His grandson, Nelson Rockefeller, did enormous harm to the country by operating through the political channel.
Did either
If Nelson Rockefeller if we had the 19th century version, and Nelson Rockefeller, with all his accumulated wealth, had tried his hardest to spend that in such a way as to reduce the freedom and the affluence of other people, he could not have come close to achieving what he did achieve in that direction as a political figure. He couldn't even have afforded to put up the Albany Mall, let alone to have undertaken the measures which made New York State a basket case, which changed the educational structure of New York State, in my opinion, in a very adverse direction. But let me go back to your first question. First place, it is simply not true that we have limited resources now, whereas we had unlimited resources in the 19th century. On the contrary, from every important economic point of view, we have a greater volume of resources now than we had then. Tell me, in 1850, how much oil did we have? It hadn't been discovered. It was useless. We had no oil. The first oil well was discovered, was drilled in Titusville in 1858. We have more oil now than we had in 1850 in a meaningful economic sense. Before nuclear power was discovered, how much nuclear power and energy did we have? The progress of technology has had the effect of increasing the effective volume of resources available to us, so that we have far greater resources available now than we had in the 19th century as a result of the technological and business developments that were produced.
Is government regulation of the resources necessary?
Not at all. Government regulation of resources of the kind we've had has led to waste and misuse of resources. So that really, go back, look at your analysis. What matters are the resources that are available to be used, not those that will be discovered later on. Of course, one more thing needs to be said. We are, of course, wealthier and better off than were the people in the 19th century. But we are their heirs. We could not be where we are if they had not done what they did. And I think it's a false comparison not to take into account the debt which we owe to the enormous economic progress and development of the 19th century, to the fact that our ancestors came here with empty hands and have made it possible for us to have a decent life. I hate to use the old cliche about standing on their shoulders, but that's what we do.
So a couple things I want to say to that. That conversation might not have even happened today. The young man asked the question, right? And he had been indoctrinated by his professors, and he had this worldview, and he was going to ask this brilliant mind the question, and Milton gave him a sound answer. And that conversation was allowed to happen, and that's a good thing, right? This is how bad ideas get squashed. Whereas today, that Milton Friedman might not even have been allowed to speak at the campus because his ideas didn't align with the people, the Marxists on the board, that had a worldview of religion that said that capitalism's evil. But this is what Isaiah was talking about. The youth will be insolent to the elder and despised to the honorable. We don't live in a society that appreciates our elders and the sacrifice that they made. The World War II generation's dying out. They made great sacrifice. We got the baby boomers now, and if you look at how people are voting, the baby boomers are the one kind of keeping up the, go to war in nations that we don't belong in, endless spending, because they've benefited from it. They didn't sacrifice. They've enjoyed all the fruits of it. Their houses and assets have appreciated immensely, but their grandchildren aren't going to be able to buy a house the way things are going. It's just a very selfish mindset. Well, it works for me, so screw everyone else. We're a sacrificial mindset of good leaders who aren't children, who aren't misfits. They go, I want to sacrifice today for the ones that are coming up behind us, not borrow from their generation to implement insane plans, broken, technologies that don't work. And this was what Milton was saying. The guy was trying to villainize the grandfather, Rockefeller, who brought a product that obviously people wanted and became very wealthy. And his grandson, who was more of the misfit because he never really earned anything and was going to fix everything through his political will. What Milton was trying to say is the way of doing it by the government allocating resources always never works. So look at what we're doing with green energy. It's all failure, and it's all a waste of money, and it's not helping. It's actually making the environment worse. And it's all run by the fear of children. It's interesting, New York State was a basket case. This was probably recorded in the 1970s. Now what is it? Look at what's going on in New York, and look at the political ideologies that are rising to the surface there. And they're all frauds. You have AOC fraud. She pretends she's from the Bronx, but she's got the vernacular down. She knows how to say the things, and she says she's from the Bronx. She grew up in a wealthy suburb. She's not Tina from the street or whatever she wants to call herself. And this other guy that ran for mayor and won in the primary, he's another fraud. If you look at his videos, when he talks to different people, he puts on different accents. Does that sound familiar? They're shallow, they're superficial, but they're dangerous. They're convincing to youth that doesn't have a grasp with their history and doesn't have a tether to like their grandfather who will tell them, I've seen this show before, don't fall for it. But there's another element of this, right? We have the paid protesters in the street. We have the children that have been manipulated, the misfits that have been lied to, twisted, they're depressed, they're anxious, they're medicated, they're on drugs, and instead of working, they're paid to wreak havoc in the streets. No king's protest. What are they talking about? Trump is a king. He couldn't even get basic things like deporting criminals, like murderers and rapists from the country without a court stopping him. Thank the Lord, the court ruled 6-3. And another example of a mountain mover versus a Molehill Misfit. You have these justices on the court. The amount of incoherent babble coming out of certain ones, these judges. I think there's people on the court that don't belong there and not on the court because of their merit. And it's not a racial thing. We have Clarence Thomas that has proven himself to be a stellar judge in that capacity and was put through horrible, racist, demeaning attacks. And you should look that up. Joe Biden was at the helm of that one, accusing him of all kinds of terrible things. But compare his work and his writings to that of Biden's appointee, who, when asked what a woman was, answered, I'm not a biologist. And look at her writings. Look at her determinations. They're sad, and it's pathetic that she's on the Supreme Court. It's frightening. She's got the job not because of her capability or talent, but because of filling a quota. And that's going to be how I end the episode. The nation cannot survive this. And I think people are fed up with it. They know that they just want mountain movers running stuff. And they don't want Molehill Misfits. It's not about gender. It's not about race. It's about competency. And this thing has infected every element of our society. Whether it's the churches that have been hijacked by unqualified, unlearned pastors, and I use that, they're not pastors, they're clowns. I've told people, stop calling them pastors. If they dress up like a clown and they make logic like a clown, they're clowns. They're not serious pastors. They're not interested in the truth. They're interested in games and gimmicks. And they show up in all kinds of outfits and they wear the collar. Look at them. They're not taking anything seriously of God. They're taking themselves seriously, and that's fine. They're entitled to it. But to take these churches that were built by people that sacrificed, looked forward, put together the resources, actually built them with their own hands, and then these people just step in, take it over. It's what Milton was talking about. It's what Isaiah was talking about. We don't appreciate that we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And the church in particular, they're spreading lies out of the church on top of it, and they're not adhering to the word of God. And we've talked about that in other episodes. But they exploit people that choose to remain ignorant on what the Bible actually says, and then takes people that are dressed as clowns with a collar on to be orders of the word. This stuff trickles into corporate world too, and it comes in. The infection has found its way in through the HR department that has tried to do this manipulation as well, where we're getting Molehill Misfits taking jobs, and the mountain movers are told to step aside, not needed anymore. And it could survive for so long, but then eventually people look around and goes, why isn't anything getting done? Or why doesn't anybody know how to do anything anymore? And the mountain movers move on. The mountain movers don't want anything to do with it. They just move on. They usually, they've saved well, they've invested well, and they just move on with their lives. But we're going to have a gap here in competency and we're seeing it in many areas. We're seeing it in medicine. We're seeing it in law enforcement, where the people with the talent, the mountain movers they were humble. They never really looked for a pat on the back. They just wanted to be treated fairly. They're going to leave, and instead they're going to have the purple-haired misfits coming in to pretend to do these jobs. So stand up, do what's right. Don't be shouted down. Don't be bullied by these people. They're weak. There's not much substance to them. They've gotten away with a lot of nonsense because people have been nice. We have to stand for truth. We have to stand for what's right. We have to lead. We have to be mountain movers. We have to step into our role. The children need to be led. We shouldn't be led by the children. Peace.
Sing it!
Thanks for joining us for another episode. I hope I got you thinking and out of your comfort zone. Believe me, the biggest fear your government has is a population that is thinking and talking to one another. So get out there, take a risk, start a conversation, make a friend, and reason with each other. Share the show with someone who you think needs to hear it. I wish you peace and love.